One of the unique elements of the Rebbe's Rashi Siches is that he addresses not only what Rashi says, but also what Rashi didn't say. Because when Rashi doesn't tell us something, because Rashi is there as the commentator for Pshutei Shel Mikra, for the simple meaning of the text, when Rashi doesn't address a seemingly obvious question, that must mean that he felt that there was such an obvious answer that by not addressing it, he was also teaching us something. He was also telling us something. And this sikha, this talk on Vayakhel, on the beginning of the portion of Vayakhel, is an example of this theme. The parsha begins, Vayakhel Moshe, that Moshe gathered the Jewish people, Vayomer aleim, and he said to them, Eila hadvarim asher tziva Hashem lases eisam, these are the things that Hashem commanded, Hashem instructed to do them. Sheishes yamim ta'aseh malacha v'yim hashvi tishbeis, on 6 days you shall do work, on the 7th day you shall rest. And immediately afterwards, it says, Vayomer Moshe, and Moshe said to the people, this is zeh hadavar asher tziva Hashem lemer, this is what Hashem has instructed, take offerings and build the tabernacle. And the rest of the next 2 portions, Vayakhel and Pikudei, deal with the building of the tabernacle. So you've got, and Rashi explains that why does it say Shabbos before going into the instructions about making the Mishkan, making the tabernacle? To teach you that even building the Mishkan doesn't override Shabbos. In other words, the purpose of mentioning the observance of Shabbat here is as a detail in the laws of making the Mishkan, of making the tabernacle, to know that even such an important thing doesn't override keeping Shabbos. So the Rebbe asks, there's several questions that Rashi does not address that seem to be very obvious here in the text. First of all, why does it split? Why does the verse split it into 2 separate statements? That it says, Moshe gathered the people, Vayomer aleim, and he said to them, these are the words that Hashem has instructed about Shabbat. And then it says again, Vayomer aleim, and he said to them, this is what Hashem has instructed you to do about building the tabernacle. Why not include them both? Especially if the mention of Shabbat here is as a detail in the laws of building the Mishkan. Secondly, why does the Torah say, La'aseis eisam, this is what God has instructed to do, and then go on to tell us about Shabbat? First of all, why mention to do? It seems to be more, in most cases, it just says this is what Hashem has instructed. Specifically, since here the instruction about keeping Shabbat is about not doing work on Shabbos, which is a passive act, not an active act. So why would it preface that by saying, La seisam, this is what God has instructed you to do? Especially since immediately after, when it gives the instruction about building the tabernacle, which is actually to do something, there it doesn't say to do. So it seems to be that it says La asos osam, those words to do are in the wrong place. Fourth, according to Rashi, that the main point of mentioning Shabbat here is to tell us the detail that even the work of the Mishkan doesn't override Shabbat. Seemingly the order is the wrong way. It would make more sense to tell us first, build the tabernacle, and then add the detail. By the way, you can't do it on Shabbos. Why does it say Shabbos first? Especially since it's actually the wrong order. In last week's parsha, in Kisisa, it told us about God instructing Moshe Rabbeinu, and over there it said that Hashem first instructed Moshe about building the tabernacle, and then added, but you still have to keep Shabbos, you can't break Shabbos. Why over here, when Moshe is repeating it to the people, does he flip it around? And again, all of these are not addressed by Rashi, which means, says the Rebbe, they must be obvious in the context of the text itself. The Rebbe explains it by saying that there's an important difference here between these 2 mitzvot, the mitzvah of building the tabernacle, building the Mishkan, and the mitzvah of keeping Shabbat. And that is that the mitzvah of Shabbos was said in the Aseres HaDibros, in the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments are unique. First of all, they're the commandments that we heard directly from Hashem. Even those, according to the Medrash that says we only heard the first 2 directly from God, and the rest were repeated to us by Moshe, nonetheless it was Moshe directly repeating the word of Hashem. Especially, and furthermore, the Ten Commandments were said in a particular voice. Ro'u es hakolos, it says they saw the voice. They answered yes about each one, as opposed to all other mitzvot in the Torah. They were said to all of the Jewish people together, men, women, and children, standing there all united. So the Ten Commandments are unique. They're different in the way they were handed over than the rest of the 613 mitzvot, the rest of the 613 commandments. According to this, he says, it makes sense that Moshe here is repeating to the Jewish people the mitzvah of Shabbos. Yes, as a detail, they need to know about the way in which they need to make the Mishkan, make the Tabernacle. But nonetheless, he emphasizes Shabbos is unique. It's one of the 10 commandments. That's why he repeats the entire commandment. La'aseis oisam, to do them. This is a mitzvah that needs to be done. As in the 10 commandments, it actually says, Zachar es yom HaShabbos, you should remember the Shabbos day. In other words, it includes an element of positive action. He mentions first the mitzvah of Shabbos before getting into the building of the Mishkan, even though the building of the Mishkan is the way in which we're going to build the tabernacle, bring godliness down into our lives. You might think, therefore, it's so important. It should come first. Nonetheless, this is one of the 10 commandments that we heard directly from Hashem. And he splits it up. He's not going to say Vayomer one time. He gathers the people and he tells them both of these commandments at the same time, because these commandments are different inherently, because there's an extra importance to the mitzvah of Shabbos, that it was part of the Aseres HaDibros. It's part of the 10 commandments. And that's why he says it first, even though the order was Hashem told him first to make the Mishkan, but he first gives precedence to keeping Shabbos, which is one of the Aseres HaDibros, which is one of the 10 commandments. The Rebbe says there's an important lesson for this in our day-to-day life. The instruction about keeping Shabbos, but not breaking Shabbos here, is just as a detail in building the Mishkan and building the Tabernacle. Nonetheless, Moshe makes it so important. He focuses on it so much. And not only that, not only repeats the whole thing, but puts it first. And Vayakhel Moshe, he gathers the people, specifically, first and foremost, to tell them about Shabbos, even before getting into the discussion about the building of the Mishkan, the building of the Tabernacle, because of the importance of le'ifrushe me'isura, to keep people away from doing something negative. No matter what it is we're involved in, even when we're involved in something so deep, so fundamental as building a tabernacle, creating a place for godliness to dwell, we always have to know that that could only be done if we're not doing anything wrong, if we're not first and foremost transgressing a prohibition. All of the best intentions, all of the wonderful things, that the highest, most important things that we could possibly accomplish, it has to start with the knowledge, with the awareness, with the certainty that we're first avoiding doing anything wrong in the process of doing it. Only then will we be able to do it properly. Only then will we be able to actually bring godliness into our lives.